with you, and appreciate it. As I mentioned earlier, if you please write any questions you have in the chat box, and don't hesitate to email me. The email, I believe, will be at the end of the presentation. My email is shall, S-H-A-L-L, at griffinhammis.com. And let's go ahead and get started. And again, I apologize that we will not be able to take questions during the presentation, but I'll try to be expedient enough that there will be some time left. If there's not, I do apologize for that ahead of time, but then please just write me and I can be happy to answer those. Let's go. So what happens is a lot of things you're going to hear today is going to be, well, if that's not reality, God, how do you know what's going to happen tomorrow? All of those sorts of things may have misgivings about a lot of the things that you're going to hear today, because this is about then social transformation and post-pandemic policies and employment, from 2021 through 2030. So it's about, hopefully will be something to get folks to thinking, wow, I think we really, really need to rethink things and to do some things differently. Let's get to planning. And so that's what that is. You can't escape that responsibility of what's going to happen by saying, well, it's just not real today. Well, it's going to be real. Data intersections. Know that something new is going to happen. It's happening is what I'm terming data intersections. That is that it used to be you just gathered information on rural and urban, but now it's rural, urban, and race. In other words, you're wanting to know how many people that are not white are in and who are white in a particular area. For example, some of you know what my background is. I'll just say that in one state, I gathered data and found that there were 4 counties in a very rural area on the very southeastern side of the state I was the state director of, and only one person was in services, was in a waiver service in an entire 4-county rural area. Not that there weren't people there who had disabilities that needed services. There were hundreds of people that needed services, but that only one person that was non-white was receiving waiver services in those 4 counties. So things like that. Again, men and women, data intersection between how many women receive services, how many men, and then by what race our folks are. And what we're looking for is inequities. We're looking at disproportional denial of services, people not getting services they may need. This is the sort of data you'll be expected to have in the future. New waiver resources by race. I've done some connection or consulting in 43 states, have found that waiver resources vary dramatically by race. That is that white folks and their sons and daughters are much more likely to be in a waiver service, and people who are not white are much more likely to be in a service that is a state plan service or other services that don't have the full waiver. Also within those services, then it varies. That is residential services, group home services versus host home services versus supported living services when people still live with their mother and father, all vary and are powerfully correlated with race. Again, these are some of the data intersections that people will be looking for inequities. VR participation by race, there's data you can find on that. Glass ceiling promotions of people. I worked in a state where half the citizens were identified as Black and half the citizens identified as white, and across a floor that of services and supports when I came to work there, of 140 state employees providing services for people with significant disabilities across that quite large state. Not one single person across that floor was not white. So again, that sort of thing is our folks will be considering, and new employment opportunities again by race. What types of jobs do people get, and that both for the people who work on behalf of citizens with disabilities and people with disabilities themselves. All these are called data intersections of both race and geography and services and gender. So I believe we're at the beginning of an era. You can look, you can see the asylum era, what the dates are there. You see the state institution era, when that's some 100 years when basically everybody that had a significant enough disability was in an institution. You see the home and institution era from 1960 to 1983, the home and community-based waivers began to be implemented by states in 83, based on change in regulation in 81. Have what I'm terming the neo-institutional era, where most of the services and supports were delivered in home and community-based services that the U.S. Department of Justice would say today, have said today, and have found that it is institutional in nature, even though it's occurring in the community. That is, by definition, that people are isolated only with other people with disabilities in the receiving of most of their services. And what a Fidelity services era from 2021 to who knows how long, let's say through 2030, where it's about based on data, based on outcomes, based on what actually happens, not speculating and this is the best we can do, but what does the actual data say before we make make a decision or even know that we have maybe an issue or a problem. So there it is, 1981, HH Secretary was given permission to waive regulations, the institutional funding to move that money into the community to prevent institutionalization. So that was a major purpose of it, was to prevent institutionalization. So only now do we see, or not just now, but quickly we saw, well, it's about providing superior services to people as compared with people who are receiving those services at institutions that, that multiple court orders and research found were receiving services that were not conducive to how you should treat human beings. So the whole purpose is to prevent institutionalization. We got that part largely done, but what happened is the services that are in the community are still very institutional in nature. Neo-institutional era, then the group homes. People are still living with only other people with disabilities in group homes, with other people who are paid to be with them. Some exceptions, of course. Workshops, again, people working alongside others. Day centers, what those are, where folks are in places with others, and then and all these sort of services, everything is in violation of the Medicaid final rule. So what happens is that workshops were on the institution grounds, then we developed workshops in the community. Day centers were on the institutional grounds, day centers in the community. Bus transportation on the institutional ground, bus transportation in the community. Executive directors in the community replacing institutional superintendents there. Sometimes the exact same person, by the way, became an executive director in the community, and later their people they mentored. So it was a transition, more of a transition over the last 40 years of institutional-like services to the community. A lot of people are going to disagree with every word I'm saying. Well, no, I don't like where he's coming from. We have all these laws and all the things we're saying. I'm saying that this is what has been the findings of the U.S. Department of Justice, and anybody that looks in what's actually happening with citizens with disabilities that's still institutional in nature. These are the things that will need to be changed. Medicaid waivers, significant weaknesses. Again, data, metabolic effects of psychotropic medications, again, shortening life because of those metabolic effects. You can look for yourself what all those metabolic effects are. Loneliness has been pervasive. Again, data research on this, not just some research paper persons have written, but longitudinal research through a variety of sources saying pervasive loneliness, unemployment, and poverty for citizens with disabilities still living in poverty. In fact, it even says, hey, to even be and get services, to get Medicaid services, you must be forever impoverished. Again, high turnover personnel working on behalf of folks, most folks with high school educated, just the direct support professionals receiving few or no benefits. That's what it looks like today in the community. That these are the sorts of things that will be changing. Let's look at this data. This is the National Report on Employment. As you can see, that non-work facility in 1999, 38% of folks with intellectual and developmental disabilities were not working, and were in a facility. Today, then, nearly 20 years later, 52% are in non-work facilities. So don't say, oh, well, we're better. No, we're not better. In fact, the data is clearly saying we're not better. In fact, more people are in a facility, not working at all, than ever before. Let's look at community integrated employment. How about that? Well, here we go. 1999, 24% of folks in community integrated employment, 20% today. It's a 2017 data. Like it could even be a little lower, but as you might guess, that equates to a 20% decrease in community integrated employment. So any notion that somehow things get better over time and we learn new things and things get better, the data is not supporting people who think that way, including myself, who thought that way for a long time. What I think needs to happen I'll just talk about in the employment side of things, community integrated employment, is that we got $64 billion we're spending every year. $64 billion taxpayer dollars being spent just on home and community-based waivers through the 1915C waiver program. Only 1.8% of it is being spent on community integrated employment of any kind, customized employment, support employment primarily. And what this is saying is that needs to be increased. That 0.8 billion of the 64 billion needs to be increased to 8 billion. It seems very reasonable that 12% of a budget, not 0.8% not 1.8% of a budget, should be increased. All these numbers at the bottom are saying you start out with 0.8, the next year 1.2. It's just a gradual. It didn't say you do anything overnight, but it says you gradually build your capacity over a 7-year period until you're providing supports and services that far more community integrated employment services with Medicaid funding and not, as we've seen, less. So COVID-19 pandemic and then George Floyd's murder. Stephen Wright, the comedian, I was walking down the street wearing glasses when the prescription ran out. That's what it feels like in America now, right? No question. There's where we are now. Is that all of a sudden we've had a great big change that is not going to go away. So the new reality of community integrated employment is simply this: you go out to talk to an employer. I'm sorry, we don't have enough work for people who are here. I have people waiting to come back to work. I have friends and family out of work. I don't plan on hiring anyone. I need to see how things go. It may be a while. These are things that the employers are saying right now, because let's face it, is that we're at a real unemployment rate north of 20% and a employment rate, according to the data, people who have actually filed new employment claims in the last month, somewhere between 10 and 20%. So new social transformation reality looks like this: unambiguous diversity and participatory leadership expectations. In other words, it understands clearly there cannot be a floor like I saw with 140 state employees working and everybody white in a state that half the citizens are black and half are white. That is not how you can, that sort of cannot operate like that anymore, and it should never have been that case. It's like I was working one place where I worked there for a decade, and as a director of a very large region, and they said, no, we don't serve anybody that speaks Spanish. Oh, interesting, because 17% of the population is Spanish. Maybe the reason why is not a single staff member that was on a staff of over 200 people spoke Spanish. That might be a reason why. And I also, in some of my work with other states, have looked at data and said that, hey, did you know in this state, in this county, 1 out of 4 people in that county, 1 out of 4 citizens in this particular county in your state does not speak English as the primary language. And did you know that not a single person has a developmental disability? I guess it's special water there that is receiving services that doesn't speak English. And when I asked the directors in that area, the providers of services there, can you tell me why you're not? Can you tell me why you're not providing services to people? How come you're only providing services to people who either don't speak or speak, if they do speak, they speak English as primary language? And their answer was, nobody has come here to apply for services that speaks a language other than English. Well, guess why not? Because you don't have anybody that speaks the language. How about that as an idea? So this is the sort of social transformation realities that are coming. Evidence-based practices, and it's known as Fidelity. Fidelity, some of you know that I developed 2 Fidelity skills around customized employment, both for discovery and for customized job development. That says not what we think you should do because we think somebody's smarter than somebody else or somebody knows about something, but here's what the data says. These are the sort of evidence-based practice that you need to do to ensure people receive good jobs in the community through customized employment. Must deliver outcomes. Best of intentions. Oh, we tried our best. Not going to work. Deliver outcomes. Clarity of purpose. Unvarnished rolling dialogue. In other words, oh, you said this. I thought we had made that decision. That is not the new reality. The new reality is that employees and customers, people with disabilities, their families need to have the opportunity, a constant opportunity to speak up anytime they wish. That's what ongoing dialogue. Not that we solved that problem and we're going to move on now. That medium doesn't work anymore. Financial and conversation transparency. I have never worked in a state where I have gone there and didn't say, hey, did you know what? The wages that we're paying people, that there's a dramatic difference between what we're paying people who are white and what we're paying people who are black, what we're paying people who are women, what we're paying people who are men. What can we do to fix that? And every single time, in every place I've worked, the answer has been, well, we're working on that, or oh, that's a lot, and oh, I didn't know it was that bad, or oh, we knew that was that bad, and we'll try to fix it, like that. And every organization that I was the CEO of, or any organization, or any place where I was the commissioner or in control of such things, then that was fixed. In other words, we made it so that people were getting the right wages for the number of years they'd worked there for the right positions. And so that is what we talk about. When I talk about financial and conversation transparency, I'm talking about an absolute fairness to the bone all the way through state government, individual provider organizations, in every instance done, and transparency. So it's no mystery that, oh, well, these people are going to make this much money and some of these other people are going to make different money. Neutrality is taking a position, the wrong position. Understand, you cannot be, no, I'm neutral on this. That is a position. And so no neutrality on these issues. You're either going to be for these changes to make fairness and equitable use of resources across the people who provide the services, or you're not. New workplace rule enforcement, again, wages, authority positions, promotions, airtime to be heard, not just listened to, opportunities. Extraordinary remedies. Well, we're going to treat everybody the same. They're not going to work. You cannot treat everybody the same. You have to treat everybody fairly, which by definition means you don't treat everybody the same. You're going to have to do unequal treatment of people who have historic unequal to be able to achieve equality. Vertical equity is the term. And then also in hiring. And we're not saying about, remember, everybody's radar is up. No tokenism. Oh, we'll hire the person, maybe, and they'll do this type of job. No, we're talking about hiring transparency across everyone so that it is diversity. I worked in a state where I had people that were not white in key management roles. And I was the third largest provider in that state. But you know what? That I had more people in management and leadership roles that were not white than all my peers statewide combined. Not to say I'm not better than anybody else. I was just hiring people who were supposed to be a best about it. That's the sort of thing that people are looking for, people that understand that we can't go on the way we have been, well, let's go. Let's keep going. Fidelity means data informed. So you're looking at population data, you're looking at race and geographic area disparity, different kinds of services by race, English primary language, as I mentioned before. You're looking at non-white culture informed changes. Again, just that one. We could talk a long time on that, to say the least. Non-tech distancing phenomena versus people people interaction fixes. Let me get at what that means. Is that there is a penchant for us to use technological fixes to things versus people interaction fixes that are a whole lot more uncomfortable. What we're saying is we got to have both. Some tech fixes, sure. Yeah, we love technology, but you better have people interaction fixes. Experiential learning versus reading, listening, learning. It can't just be, well, here's something for you to read, here's something you listen to, we're going to learn. It needs to be experiential learning. So there's for everyone. And I call this Juneteenth informed communications. Why we have Juneteenth celebrated, of course, as you know, is the folks in Texas didn't find out that slavery had ended for 2.5 years. And so what we're saying is that this idea of delayed communications, where somebody gets to hear about something, whatever it is, that are on the inside, and others don't get to hear about things, that sort of activity is, again, needs to go away, or will go away. So clear definitions of what is good. So there's not a mystery. It's not situation specific. It's what is considered good in your organization, what is considered good in your state. And transparency and results. Did the investment of the taxpayer dollars, of the $64 billion if for intellectual and developmental disabilities, does it make a difference, or are people still where they were? I know they're out of institution. I know they're not an institution. I got that. But now what? Now what with the dollars, is it making a difference? Community integrated employment reality. 47 million people filed for unemployment claims, 10 to 20% unemployment. So new reality for IDD settings. This was data from back in April. There's been much more data. You can look it up yourself and see the infection and death rate in group settings. Group homes for people with developmental disabilities is higher than any other setting for people with disabilities. Nursing homes, people are also with developmental disabilities in nursing homes. New reality is the data is there. We need to have alternatives to that. Obviously, well, let's look at some of them. Non-employment research policies. What your state's PASSAR policies are. PASSAR it was built to keep people out of nursing homes. It is being used in some states, as a triage, making a decision whether this person's medical needs are greater or are so salient that trumps somehow a person's receiving home and community-based waiver services. No, that's illegal. And yet states are doing that. Instead, PASSAR is built for one reason. It is built to keep people out of nursing homes and to be provided in the community. And if they are in a nursing home, that that be temporary. And while they're in a nursing home, they are required to receive something like something called specialized services. I have done consulting with states where no one in the state government even knew what specialized services was. Not a single person. I'm talking about nobody in Medicaid. No person had ever heard of something called specialized services or what that is and what it looks like. And if you're a provider of intellectual and developmental services today, know that specialized services can almost, in my opinion, only be safely provided by you. It's not something provided by a nursing facility. Specialized services are provided by a home and community-based services provider, and the services that you provide look exactly like waiver services. So that's what specialized services are. It's an enormous amount of money that can be going to community-based service providers that they're missing. Community ICF IDs, as institutions in the community, we know what that is. Family host homes versus group home ratio. If you're in California, then almost everyone is in some type of family host home. And if you're just about anywhere else, then it's far rare. Most people are in the group home model. What that ratio is says a lot about what the policy of a particular state is. Services received by race, as I mentioned, financing by race, proportion served by race in any particular county, and then what is the natural proportion by race. How come a place would have let's say 17, like I mentioned before, where I was 17% of the folks that would be Latino or Latina, and then not a single person receiving services out of the some 1,700 people we were providing services to in that particular county. Post-pandemic social transformation, Medicaid final rule. We have it. Medicaid final rule, supposed to have been done by 2019. Now it's been postponed, not implemented yet, to 2022. So 2022, states are required to implement the Medicaid final rule. Again, we could go through hours and hours talking about all the details of the Medicaid final rule. You should know those and understand them clearly about what is expected by law to be in place by 2022. And it is alternatives to day centers, workshops, group homes, anything that it ends up has an isolating impact or effect on citizens with disabilities. Their words: settings should not have been designed to provide multiple types of services and activities on site specifically for a person with disabilities. Not receiving services, or persons with disabilities should be fully integrated, not receiving services with others, and they should be receiving services with others who do not have apparent disabilities. Okay, U.S. Department of Justice. Segregation, this is their words again. Violation, ADA, Olmstead, congregation segregation, isolation, general population can only be justified unless the congregation segregation can be justified. So no, unless somehow you can justify congregation segregation, isolation, can't have that. But the exception clauses are a great big deal, because there's Olmstead, I just read it to you, unless congregation segregation, isolation can be justified. And there we have the 13th Amendment to the Constitution. No slavery unless, except it's a punishment for a crime where a party shall have been duly convicted. And of course, in the Pulitzer Prize winning book, Slavery by Another Name, you can see how slavery continued until the mid-1940s in some of our southern states, because of this clause there that showed that it did not end in 1965. All you had to do was arrest people and then develop different ways to keep them permanently permanently. I mean, not 7, 8 years, permanently incarcerated and working on behalf. The book again, Slavery by Another Name. So exception clauses are dangerous, and there's one certainly in Olmstead, and there's one in the 13th Amendment to the Constitution. These things, of course, as you might guess, people are certainly looking at. All right, so know this if you know nothing else about what I'm saying today. A service is not a place. A service is not a place. And that's what's happened. Is somehow a service became, residential services somehow became a group home. Somehow day services became a day facility. Somehow all these things became places to put people, to transport people to. The same thing with our social transformation. A life is not an area of town. Life doesn't mean that you are segregated, congregated in a particular area of town by redlining or other sorts of methods that mean that this is the place that you get to live and other people don't want to live. So a life is not an area of town, service is not a place. So in 2021, next year, Secretary of Health and Human Services should encourage states to rewrite their waivers, to reduce and prevent group services and increase and provide integrated services, again, in concert, in agreement with the Medicaid final rule. Fidelity, what it means is that service and supports with validity and reliability to proven and promised outcomes. In other words, where we do this not because it's the right thing to do, not because somebody said it was to do, not because what we always do here, not because it's family choice of what happens, not because it's the person's choice, not because all those things are still all valid. But we do things because they make sense. They have proven reliability and they deliver promised outcomes. We do something because then we have data and information and proof that this is what we should be doing and these sort of things we should not do. Now, what this is called, another way to call this, and I gave a presentation many years ago in a hotel in Colorado where the movie Jack Nicholson, The Shining, was actually filmed. So that's why I thought of the title. But it's called Freedom from the Grasp of the Dead Man's Hand. And who the dead men are just old guys that are long since gone, and then we end up saying, well, this is what we're supposed to do because this is kind of what we've always done. Well, no, we need to. Fidelity says do not continue your life in providing services to people with disabilities in the grasp of the dead man's hand, but instead have freedom to be able to, based on data, information, based on what actually delivers great outcomes for citizens, provide that service, not just the service that someone said, yeah, we need to keep doing things this way because this is what the state pays us for. So new Medicaid fidelity waivers have fidelity to best practices that deliver superior psychosocial habilitation and rehabilitation results. Because see, that's what we're doing. We're not providing custodial services with Medicaid waivers. It's against the law to do that. What we're doing is providing psychosocial rehabilitation and rehabilitation services. What we've not been doing is checking to see, do those services, are they doing any good? Are they making any difference? Wait a minute, in this state or in this part of the state or in this area or in this provider, things are just going great. How come it isn't going great everywhere? You know, it's that sort of, that's what Fidelity is saying. What is the information and doing things, what makes sense? So Fidelity waivers, some of the things about Fidelity waiver financing, based on providers' costs, not statewide rates for the same service. And again, another day or two just about how do you get out of a statewide rate phenomenon. It's just amazing to me that if you ask folks who have intellectual states, your rates for, let's say for a VR service, let's say for an intellectual and developmental disability service, let's say for a mental health service, so you ask them, do you have a statewide rate? Yep, yeah, we have statewide rates. We have the same thing everywhere. How come? Well, it's Medicaid. It's Medicaid, and so we have Medicaid or it's VR. We have statewide rates for the same service. That just seems to make sense to us. Oh, did you know that not a single nursing home in your state uses that same Medicaid money, that same Health and Human Services money has a rate? In fact, by law, they're required, as you are, to be able to provide those rates based actually on what the cost of those services are. And so when you look at one state that was helped with this, they had 450, it won't be hard to figure out which state it is, had 453 nursing homes. And every single nursing home had a different customized rate based on exactly what their cost of services were and what type of services are provided, that they are providing. So services and supports must improve, not just maintain the recipient's situation or location. Evidence that recipients are now are included in the life of society. And look at this last bullet. Reduction in taxpayer costs. That is that the intervention, the services should be so effective that it makes a difference and reduces the taxpayer costs. I was told by some of the people at the highest levels of our government, don't say that, Steve. I've been saying it, of course, for 25 years. Don't say that. Don't ever tell them that we can deliver services that are so effective that they actually reduce the taxpayer costs, or they will cut our money. They will reduce our money. And yet we have stacked waiting lists everywhere, as if there's any chance of not having plenty of people that need the services, and we need more money, not less money, to provide effective services. We just need to be sure that the service we're providing actually deliver a result. It's not about the money, unless it's about the money, and it's always about the money. $1, 1989, worth $2.13. $39 rate. When I didn't know this at the time, but now I found out many years later, when I was operating the largest community integrated employment program in the United States, our rate was $39 an hour. Today, that rate would be $83 an hour. I don't know anybody that's getting $83 an hour to provide supports and services, community integrated employment through support employment or customized employment. I'm just saying, just inflation. If you look at the last 30 years, what we've had, of course, is a dramatic decline in the amount of services that are provided to folks. The wages of the people who are providing these services are between $9 and $15 an hour, making between $18,000 and $31,000. You look at the data. You look at the same data I've looked at and see, just on inflation, what that would mean. You ask somebody, what world were you getting paid in 1989, and what for folks, and what would that be today? And as you can see, I've calculated at the bottom, is that I would calculate today to the actual wage of the citizen delivering the employment specialist or the job developer delivering that. And this is nationwide average, obviously much higher in some areas and somewhat lower certainly in other areas, of $62,400 per year. That's the wages that don't go to a provider agency, but it instead goes to the people providing that service. Fidelity waivers, ideal conditions of employment, inclusion. So 2013, Chaz Mosley, myself, a couple professors, Dr. Kleiner, Dr. Kathy Shepard-Jones wrote an article, Journal of Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities, which describes something termed 11% solution. What I did is I began moving waiver dollars. Every word I'm saying, every word, then is either I've done that, I'm hoping somebody does that someday. No, I've either done it or it is being done either in the United States or in another country. This particular one is published of what happened in Kentucky when we moved the dollars in the waiver services and reduced the amount of money that was flowing to congregate services and increased the amount of money that was going to employment. Again, a lot more can be said about that, but that's enough. You can look at that yourself and see how that was done, and find that journal article in the Journal of Intellectual and Developmental Disabilities in 2013. Post-pandemic waiver and social transformation tools. Okay, participant-directed services. That means the money goes in the second one, individual budgets. That is, the money does not go from the state to provider organizations. It goes in individual budgets to people with disabilities who then are provided services by the provider organizations. You do that with tools called a fiscal intermediary. It allows you to be able to, for people who have the skills to provide the services. Again, I wish I had more time to describe all the details of what a fiscal intermediary services are. These are actual services built into a home and community-based waiver, or are built into an I-state plan amendment, particularly great for people with significant mental health needs, behavioral health needs. And then transparent individual provider rates based on individual provider costs. So fiscal intermediary services, individual budgets, participant directed, transparent individual provider rates. More services. These are what the new modern waivers should look like. Community guide services. That is, it has somebody that helps you be sure that you have a combination of the best providers of your services may be. Goods and services. Again, a category that few states even know exists, but it allows a few state Medicaid know exists. What it does, it allows great flexibility for services and supports. And then education and training services. It's not education and training services for personnel, but this is education and training services that, for example, that I in Colorado Springs used this service to be able to provide education and training for most of the faith-based congregations and churches and other folks in the community. So it's great. It's a great for being able to empower a community to be a part of helping deliver service and supports for people with disabilities, and to be able to draw on all that social capital that we always miss if we're going back in our own human services funded worlds, instead of having a world where people with disabilities are among other folks. And then of course, customized employment services. So, ultimate post-pandemic tool, customized employment. And you know, some of you know what the stages are. Discovery first. If you don't know customized employment, you need to learn customized employment. And it doesn't need to be whatever your particular version of it is. We have enough information now to know what customized employment looks like when it's fidelity to best practices, when it's proven research and data saying this sort of thing delivers the outcome. Don't do that. Don't call that customized employment, because doing that is not customized employment, and you're not going to get the outcomes that you hope for. Obviously, alternatives to situational assessments, the entire informational interview approach, and then one VR supervisor told me of one of the largest counties in the United States. She said, "You know what, Steve? We always thought we were providing job development, but you know what we were doing? We were providing job finding services. We weren't ever providing job development until now in customized employment. And now we're finally providing real customized employment. We're providing real job development, because what we were really doing is job finding. We were just going out there trying to find out what jobs may be out there, and rather than trying to find what the ideal conditions are of employment for this particular person. So it's a job that pays well. It's the kind of job the person can do well, and it's a job that lasts." Okay, just some tools that are available in customized employment that are just not, and there's at the Griffin-Hammis website, there's everything that's up here is in a much greater detail in other webinars, and available obviously in many different ways to find this information. From Griffin-Hammis Associates and certainly the states we work with, is employment negotiation, that you don't just fill a job, you're negotiating it. Self-employment doesn't always mean it's wage employment. You can have your own business, but you can have your business within a business. Resource ownership, you can have a tangible asset, piece of machinery, something that you may even bring to the to a particular business or site, again, as a part of being hired. We all have tangible assets, right? You know, that means, oh, this is your experience, this is your education, this is what you've done. Oh, that's your tangible assets that we're bringing to the for the job interview or for whatever. This is about people with significant disabilities also having tangible assets to bring. And then, of course, the consultative employment support model, where you don't have the job coach teaching everything. I mean, think about this just for a second. Why in the world would we have people who don't know how to do the work then try to get folks jobs, try to teach people how to get folks jobs, but try to teach people how to do the job? Why wouldn't it be a great idea that we had the coworkers who actually know how to do the job? They be the people who teach the person how to do the job, because they actually have the skills to know actually how to do that. And then we work out about what will be the support roles of the human service professional working alongside the coworker related to the person's disability related needs and learning needs and support needs, while the person who is the coworker is providing the direct training and skills. Medicaid law says this: it is illegal to have anyone providing a service that they do not have the skills to do. Yet, this is what we do constantly in community integrated employment, is having people who don't have the skills to do the job themselves, teaching people how to do that. No wonder that so many people in community integrated employment ended up in jobs that other people wouldn't want to do. That's being kind by saying it that way. Jobs that picking up after people, tidying up, taking out trash, doing other jobs, those types of jobs. That's what happens when the bridge to community life, the employment bridge to community life, is only as wide as the employment specialist doing the work. And what a consultative approach says, we're tired of narrow bridges to community life. We're going to have a broad bridge to community life. And how that bridge becomes broad is by bringing people who know how to teach and train particular skills and abilities to people, bringing coworkers and other people from the community onto that bridge, if you will, that them be a part and partner with them as a part of delivering these supports and services. Okay, so this is saying, just as clear as it can be, or maybe not so clear, that if this works so well for so many people who have the most significant disabilities, maybe we need to be thinking about this for so many other people. Look at the data on white, rural, over 50, high school educated or less men who lose their job after turning 50 years old. Look at their unemployment rate and see if you don't think that, I think we might have a problem in not having millions of people that don't have any chance of getting a job that's anywhere close to the skills or what they were doing before, if they become unemployed in those rural communities and fit that demographic. I'm just saying what that demographic is. That's, again, data says we have a problem. We need to be doing something besides what we're doing now, or we're going to continue with a lot of people unemployed. Okay, so what I'm going to say now, these things seem radical to us, common in other countries. There's not a word I'm putting up here that isn't how they implement integrated community employment to people with disabilities and others in 30 European nations and many Asian nations. First of all, mandatory targeted population hiring. When you have any type of demographic group of people that are not getting good jobs, not making wages, are living in poverty, you target them. You simply say, these folks are targeted for hire, are targeted for what you're going to do. If you, to put it blunt as I can say, if you have a business that hires over 30 people, then you're going to be hiring some people that that are in this targeted group to be hired. That's how 30 European nations work. Wage subsidy employers. That's right. The government subsidizes the 100% of the wage of the new employee. Not 90, not 29 out of 30 European countries. 100% of the wage, and then it varies from that point on. Some stay at 100%, others go down to 50% wage subsidy. In other words, make it real clear. We understand employers. Here's what Europeans say about us. Tell me how y'all are doing with that service you provide, these community-graded services you provide, where you're providing services where the employer, you have to meet an employer that will do this out of the kindness of their heart, because that's what you really got going on in your country. In our country, we make sure employers receive extraordinary compensation for hiring everybody. We want all of our citizens to be employed in regular businesses throughout our communities. And how to do that is make sure that there's no money issue that's standing in the way of that. Paid subsidy for co-workers for training skills. You hear me say co-workers before. Well, of course, how it's solved is that co-workers, as they're helping the training of citizens with disabilities, they're paid. This one is available right now, and it's actually happening in some places in the United States. Family and individual subsidy. They have flex security. We call ours Social Security. How flex security simply works like this. If you are eligible for it because of a significant disability, then that's the money that you have. Employment is, of course, money on top of that. They think it would be absolutely bizarre to say, hey, guess what? If you go to work, then we're going to cut your Social Security. We're going to reduce the amount of money that we're giving you based on your disability. And then they would say, like, what? My disability, you think it went away? I still have a disability. And that is how all other countries see this. So Social Security then is something that's permanent, not taken away. In the last 7 years, 3 Nobel Prize laureates, winners have won based on something called behavioral economics, which show that if you offer somebody something, but to get it, they're going to lose something, they're going to turn it down. It's called loss avoidance. Behavioral economics, 3 Nobel Prize winners, last 7 years, say don't operate Social Security the way you are in the United States, because what you're doing, you're disincentivizing people going to work. Universal transportation. It just is the idea that some people could not go places that they wouldn't want to go because they can't afford to have a car and go through all the licensing is just really bizarre in other places. It's like, of course, we'll provide it. Of course, everybody doesn't drive. We need to be sure everybody gets around. Okay, more possibilities. Students can be employed as part of their education plan. They can be. That is, even during the school day, without saying, no, we're not double dipping, anything like that. Again, show you how that's done. Connect with rural residents of the nation. Again, broadband isn't even available in many, many places throughout the United States. We actually have 2 absolutely different countries now, with people in many rural areas have no idea about what's going on and happening, where the rest of us have instant connection with every single minute of anything that's happening. High-speed ground transportation, again, the only major country that does not have high-speed ground transportation widespread. In this country, it's either cars or trucks or to get around, or planes. So as you might guess, no high-speed ground transportation. Who loves it? The airline industry and American airline industry loves that we don't have high-speed ground transportation. Obviously, it's a great big deal to them to keep it out. Employee-owned service providers. We go with for-profits or not-for-profits. That's your 2 choices. A third choice is S corporations that are employee-owned, meaning that the employees, a not-for-profit could transition itself and become an employee-owned business, where the employees that are working in the not-for-profit organization become part owners of the business. Many corporations already in the United States and across the world are employee-owned businesses. Germany is the poster child for this sort of thing, but certainly the United States has many places that do that as alternatives to just for-profit stockholding corporations or not-for-profits. Okay, first 410 years, slavery. Then we had more slavery up to 1865. Then we had slavery by another name, as I mentioned. Then we had segregation, 1965 to 2020. And then starting in 2021, we're having social transformation. In summary, it's not about the money. I'll say it again. Not about the money, unless it's about the money. The best boss I ever had. This is a quote from her. It's not about the money. She said, Commissioner, let me tell you, a lot of people will be coming to you, but always remember this. It's not about the money, unless it's about the money. It's always about the money. Universal basic income, individual budgets, participant-directed financing, and employer subsidies. These few tools, these 4 tools that are available right now would work for folks. Okay, let's stop. And did folks have any questions? I was pretty quick, but folks, we have a few minutes for questions. And again, please send me questions. And there is my email. And I'd love to hear from you and any thoughts or about this. And again, this will, if you know other people that you should have seen this or you should never see it, whatever your opinion is, then if it is that you should see this and hear this, then this will be available on the Dallas will put it up on the Griffin-Hammis website. Questions? Dallas, do we have some? Do you know?
I don't see any questions right now.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you very much. Hope this was of interest to you, and looking forward to hearing from you if you have any questions or thoughts in the future about what I've talked about today. Take care. Thank you.